The Indian Machine Tool Manufacturers Association, IMTMA, providing the cutting edge to India's machine tool industry. IMTMA was formed in 1946 with a vision of providing a one-stop impetus for the machine tool industry in India, spearheading India into the forefront of industrial revolution by providing a platform for symbiotic industry growth and innovation-led machine tool technologies. What's more, IMTMA has today become a center of excellence for focused application-based training.
The topic is application of robots in manufacturing automation. Any automation basically involves movement of objects, and that could be realized through non-robotic manipulator or through robotic control. Now, examples of non-robotic manipulator, things which are operating in on-off mode. They are used for fixed automation and with limited dexterity. I suppose people know this word dexterity. The word dexter represents hand. Ambidextrous means a person who can use both left hand and right hand. So dexterity means that the automation actuator is having the flexibility and approachability and maneuverability of a human hand. Okay. So wherever the manipulation required is limited, you require limited dexterity, you can go for non-robotic automation. Okay. They are normally used for pick, move, and place, and it is primarily used for reducing effort and for remotely working in hazardous or inaccessible area. Basically, all these their position control is discrete. It is made on, it is working on on-off type of abrupt motion actuators and sensors. So all the movements are abrupt, sudden. They start suddenly, they stop suddenly. Okay. And the feedbacks are normally based on things like limit switches and proximity switches. There is no trajectory control. Whereas when you talk of robotic based automation, of course, these are the popular standard standalone articulating type of robots. These are modular, but it need not be always like this. Robotic automation is used where you want programmable and adaptive automation. And those are used normally for high dexterity jobs like intricate assembly, painting and welding. And they have coordinate system based trajectory control of movement. Okay. So they will have a rotary encoder or some position feedback devices and position control. And if the earlier one, when this moves, it is like a break dance, like a modern dance. Everything happens in jerk and there is a lot of energy. This is like classical dance. Everything is very smooth. Movements are effortless and smoothened out a lot. So this is for intricate, high dexterity jobs which may often be adaptive also. But the catch is robotic automation may or may not employ the so-called robots. Usually these devices, we call them as robots, but robots can come in various sizes and shapes and various morphologies. So the thing is, if there is a trajectory control, you would call it as a robotic automation. Now, a summary of what are the differences. Non-robotic manipulator based positioning is point to point. Movements are abrupt. Positions are sensed by limit switches and proximity switches. Actuation is usually by pneumatic or hydraulic or by simple electric motor, induction motor. To smoothen out the movement of motors, you might use VFD or variable frequency drive. In case of hydraulic control, you may use flow control, servo valve, and those kind of things to smoothen out things and to have jerkless movement for things like spilling control. Commands are all on-off type. They will come through PLC. So sequence of movement is manual, or it may be wired as a relay logic, or it may come through PLC. Unless operated manually, there is hardly any flexibility and adaptive control. They are mostly dedicated, but sometimes may be modular. Robotic controls have trajectory control and positioning based on coordinate system. Movements are smooth. Positions are sensed by rotary encoders. Actuation is with servo motors and servo controllers. Speed of movements can be programmed. It can be teached in, and it can be always overridden at the time of execution. Commands are analog but realized through equivalent digital value control. And sequence of movement is controlled by computerized multi-axis position controllers. And for teaching in the trajectory, you may use HMI with joystick or mouse. And augmentations are possible with robots such as force sensor, vision sensors, or you may hang a robot upside down on a moving axis, or you may have a linear axis, and it can have added flexibility and adaptive control. Robotic automation is mostly modular, but sometimes customized. So these are the primary differences between robotic and non-robotic automation. Now, if you talk of 5-axis CNC machine, this is a 5-axis CNC machine. You have X, Y, Z, and about the neck, A axis and B axis, right? Or C axis and B axis, whatever you call. In robot, there is something equivalent, identical. This is called a gantry robot used for laser cutting. Here also you have a 5-axis head. Now 5-axis CNC machine, 5-axis head. Both use servo motor, servo controller, position control for 5-axis. Now you would ask me, what is the difference? So what is the difference essentially between a CNC and a robo? That is the question. CNC is essentially a chip forming machine tool, which has got to be having spindle, while robo is primarily a material handling system. And you normally buy a robo based on the payload of the robo, what it can move. Machine tool is an arrangement for controlled material or chip removal from a workpiece by forcing relative movement of workpiece against a sharp edge or point of cutting tool at the cost of energy. CNC axis and drives and structure are designed to withstand cutting forces, and they produce movements which require precision and accuracy, while robo is only designed to carry the payload. While CNCs are generally 5-axis and 5-axis CNCs are adequate to do any kind of job, robos are often 6-axis. This gives it capability to maintain ride-on height and perpendicular angle at constant speed without having to dwell at corner points at change of traverse from X to Y or vice versa. Can be made adaptive with camera assist and sensors, while CNC always executes the path with respect to machine coordinate system as programmed. The 6-axis or ride-on axis is important, and what is the concept of ride-on? So suppose this is a laser cutting job with something like a hemispherical mound, and this is the 5-axis laser cutting head. Now suppose you want the nozzle to remain perpendicular to the surface, and you want to draw a square on top of this hemispherical mound. Now the thing is, in one direction, you are able to maintain the perpendicularity and draw an arc. When you come to the corner, you have to dwell, index the c-axis by 90 degree, and then move on. Now, if the dwelling is not allowed at the corner, at the vertices, then you essentially need a 6-axis. And what will be the 6th axis? Of course, there are 6 degrees of freedom: x, y, z, rotation about x, rotation about y, rotation about z. Okay. So you will have a robo which will have these kind of degrees of freedom. So you will be able to maintain perpendicularity and draw the trajectory without having to dwell anywhere at the constant velocity, right? Another thing is, since this is a sheet metal part to part, there will be some variability expected. Now, the problem with the CNC machine or robo for that matter is that it will draw the program trajectory repeatably all the time. Now, if job to job there is a variability, sometime you will get a good quality of laser cut, sometime it may go out of focus, sometime the nozzle may scrape through the surface of the job. So you need certain bare minimum accuracy and repeatability from job to job, only for the sake of automation, only for the sake of using robo, which is unjustified. So what is along the tool axis, that is along the axis of nozzle, you have a tiny axis which is self-adapting, and you have in the nozzle a capacitive gap sensor which maintains a designated gap with respect to top of the surface. So if there is a job to job variability of 1 mm, 2 mm, that this is able to absorb while drawing the trajectory. Okay. So that makes it possible to use robot and robotic automation for jobs which do not have a great accuracy. So this is the concept of ride-on axis. This is an autonomous axis where you are able to have something like 5 mm cushion, which you are able to move the thing up and down and maintain the gap. Now, it is possible to maintain a uniform gap with respect to the job surface. It is also possible to press against the job surface and apply a designated force constantly. Right? So you can have the ride-on axis with force control, or you can have it with the gap control. Otherwise, robo would blindly draw the trajectory, and it does not care if the focus is lying on the surface or if the job is getting damaged with the nozzle. Right? So that is the concept of virtual axis or the ride-on axis, which is used to accommodate jobs with lesser accuracy and more variability, because it is not economically viable to have accurate jobs only for the sake of doing it with robot. Okay. So these are the 6 axes: X, Y, Z, rotation about X, rotation about Y, rotation about Z. Robos have high dexterity and speed. Many times the failures in robos come due to moving cables, moving hoses. There are torsional forces, so hoses may crack, cables may open, cables may short. So those kind of problems will come. Another thing you will realize that here, what I have said, X, Y, Z and rotation about X, Y, Z, these are all essentially Cartesian coordinates. But robo basically inherently works on rotations. So it is closer to polar coordinates. So you have the fixed arms, and you have these kinematic pair joints, and the rotation happens at the joints always. And you have to realize Cartesian movements through this combination of linkage and polar coordinate systems. So that's the concept in robotics. Of course, nobody stops us from increasing the number of axes in this single arm. For example, you can add one more joint like this one. This becomes the 7th axis. And what could be the advantage? The advantage is the reach of this robo will increase. Reach is one thing, dexterity is another thing. So to tide over the problem of reach within the working volume, if you increase the number of axes, or for that matter, if you make these linkages, kinematic linkages collapsible, for example, like a boom crane. You can have a hydraulic cylinder for each of these linkages where you are also able to alter the length. Well, that will improve the accessibility. You are able to position faster, reach where you want to reach faster, and the reach increases. Now, we are talking always of dexterity. With your finger, can you scratch your wrist? You can't, because there is no reach. Dexterity is there, but reach is not there. So increasing number of axes increases the reach. Okay. And linkage size, of course, will extend the working volume. And the rating of these servo motors and the design of these arms will determine the payload that it can carry. So standard standalone 6 or 7-axis robos, where the number of axes means number of position controlled movements. You can have a standard 6-axis robo, keep it on an XY table which can move in XY. Well, you can augment additional axis. You can put robo on a tilting turning table or with a tilting and turning table which can carry the job. You can have a gantry type robo which can work in Cartesian coordinate directly. You can have SCARA robo, which looks something like the picture which I showed you in a manipulator thing. And you can have robo trolley and many other kind of robos. Then there is something called as delta robo. Talking of number of axes of position control, I leave you with one question: how many axes your body has? How many position controls your body can do? Think about it. You can have variants of robo like robo trolley. You can have a robo scissor lift. You can have a robo forklift. You can have a robo tugger or even a robo crane. This is delta robo. These linkages are manipulated and it can do assembly or pick and place very fast in a limited work volume. Now, talking of applications of robots, most of the applications which are common are pick and place. Now, in pick and place applications, there are two varieties: pick and place as program, that is doing the blind execution, or pick and place with adaptive and flexible control, which is assisted with camera or a force sensor. Then you can have another extended application called as assembly line tending. You have a mass production line and robo reach the material to the assembly line. The assembly is still done by operator manually, but the parts are reached correctly at the site. Then you have press line automation. So these are the four flavors of material handling where the robots are used in industry. So most common are pick and place, where it does a blind execution as programmed. So it requires certain precision in the part, the way it is presented for picking and also sometimes for placing, which means that the parts to be picked have to be carried on a fixture. For example, if you want robo to pick up cold drink bottles, if cold drink bottles are kept in a crate, then probably robo can pick up from the matrix and it is able to do the job and keep it on a conveyor or something. But if the bottles are kept in a bucket in any way, then robo cannot pick up because robo does not know the orientation of the bottle. Okay. So that's what I said. It requires something like a crate. It requires certain bare minimum precision and repeatability in the manner the job is presented for picking. And parts have to have that level of consistency and relatively narrow tolerance, like in cold drink bottles. Suppose I replace the cold drink bottles with eggs, for example. You want to pick up eggs from a crate. Now, egg will have dimensional variance. The way the egg will be kept in a crate can also vary a little bit. Some eggs may be upside down. So how does the gripper catch them? So that is where you require adaptive thing. But robo will blindly go and pick up where it has been programmed to pick up. And if it does not find the job, either it will dash with the job, or it will damage the job, or it will not do the job properly. So certain minimum accuracy is required for the sake of automation. Now these are some of the pictures of pick and place. This is a factory somewhere in Dubai, where they make these junction boxes, electrical junction boxes. So this frame of the box is getting picked up by robo. The robo carries a fixture in this case to locate the part properly and to be able to keep it on the conveyor. So either robo has to carry the fixture or the part has to be presented in a fixture. But some level of repeatability and precision has to be there in the process. This is another example where there are three machines, special purpose machines, which are machining this crankcase for an automotive engine. This is carried from first machine to second machine to third machine, and also from the bin to first machine, and also from last machine to the bin or conveyor. So you have to have some kind of a fixture in the gripper itself. You can see these locating pins, which will be able to locate the part and pick it repeatably so that it is able to keep it with precision on the machine tools. Because these are CNC machines, they will blindly execute the cutter path. So you require that kind of precision. So necessarily it goes with some kind of precision fixturing. Talking of another category where you want adaptive control, you want to pick up something like eggs or cold drink bottles which are lying in a bucket, or nut bolts which are lying in a bin in any way. So you need some kind of adaptive positioning at the robo end while executing. It cannot be programmed always. So broadly the trajectory will be programmed, but there is a finer control which is done adaptively. Okay. So for example, parts may lie randomly in a bin. So you have to have a camera or a scanner which determines the orientation of the parts which are lying on the top. And controller adaptively commands the robo and gripper to orient itself according to the part. And then it picks the way it is supposed to be picked. And for keeping, most of the time the picking may require some adaptability, but keeping, if you are keeping it on a conveyor, it is okay. But sometimes you may want to keep it in a vacuum formed tray where there is a recess for each part. On the assembly line, you want to reach the parts as a kit to the left side station and right side assembly station on various stations. So the parts which need to be assembled on any station, you have to put it in a tray, and the tray has a depression for each part. And while keeping, the robo has to pick from the bin and keep it in the tray in appropriate cavity. That is called as intelligent robotic kitting. Okay. So you have to sense where that cavity is, whether it is vacant, and where the part has to be kept. Okay. So camera or scanner identifies how to locate the vacant slot in the tray. Suppose eggs are to be placed picked from the crate, the gripper has to have the flexibility and a force limit feature. It has to apply the force which is adequate to lift the egg, but it should not be so much that it will crush the egg. And that is accounting for the variability in dimensions from egg to egg. So mostly such a gripper will be based on low pressure pneumatics, where the pneumatics itself will limit the force which it can apply. Only thing is you can't expect that it will reach the final position while gripping. So when the pressure comes, you assume that the gripping has happened. These are some of the pictures. If the parts are kept like this, for example, these plumbing joints are kept like this, they have to be lifted from the two ends. So the gripper has to position, it has to sense the orientation, grip it from the two ends and lift. Now here, the lifter has a magnet, so it has to lie on this surface. So it has to identify the plane in which the surface lies, and it has to put the magnet there and lift the part. So these are the examples of adaptive picking. Okay. Assembly line tending is an extension of these. See, imagine you have an assembly line where nowadays it is a lean era. which means that even if you are talking of a assembly line for a car, after every 2-3 cars, it may be a different model. So operator cannot remember which is the right part for which model. He is not expected to remember either. He should concentrate on assembly. And the part should reach him, and the correct part should reach him. So that is the responsibility of tending system, which is intelligent and which is driven by robotics. So assembly is done manually on LH side and RH side at various stations, because person cannot move from, so the vehicles keep running on that conveyor. So the assembly has to be completed within the stipulated takt time. It is desirable that all the correct parts reach to him in a tray as a kit, so that he is even, and there also the placement in the kit, the way the kit is designed, he knows which part goes where. Okay, so the kit has a mix of different parts, but different parts, when they arrive in your store, they will arrive in separate bins and containers and separate packing. So intelligent kitting will have to be done, where there will be a kitting station where robo will pick the part from a bin or its package and keep it intelligently in a tray on the other side. And the tray will be stacked onto AGV, automatic guided vehicle, which is nothing but a robotic vehicle. And those trolleys will carry the part to the station where the parts are supposed to go, where the trays are supposed to go. And obviously the rate of arrival of parts must match the rate of consumption at the line, and tending has to match the speed of replenishment. These are robot trolley examples. Now this is a robot trolley which has an additional axis. This red thing you can see, it has a hydraulic cylinder inside which can lift. It can lift a rack also. So it can go under the rack, lift the rack and carry it on the line like this. Another design. You can attach the kit in the form of different bins sometimes, and you can carry the whole rack onto the assembly line directly. And it can keep it wherever it is supposed to keep and come out and go lift the next trolley, next tray after that. This is another variant which is interfacing between the warehouse and the kitting station. So this is a scissor lift, which is again position controlled. So this is a scissor lift on top of a robot trolley, and it has vacuum cup. It can go, it can identify based on barcode or QR code, which is the right carton. It can lift the carton, carry it on the kitting station and leave it there. So these are another kind of robo. The brand name is called Invia Robo. These are popularly used in warehouses now. Talking of sheet metal forming, one can buy number of presses on a line, since you have number of dies, number of operations for making each sheet part. Say you have draw, cutting, trimming, piercing, cam forming, cam piercing, restrike, etc. part off, etc. So all the dies are kept in the same sequence on this press line. But from first press, the part has to be moved to the second press, third press, fourth press, and so on. So what you do is you buy the presses separately, possibly from different sources, possibly second-hand presses, and then you buy robos from somewhere else and keep robos between the presses at the beginning of the line, at the end of the line. Okay. So these are standard robos, which when the press is open, it will go inside, pick up the sheet part on vacuum cups and bring out the part and keep it in the next press. Obviously, when the robo is entering a press, the press has to wait at top dead center, which means that you are wasting a lot of time for a costly resource. A press like this can cost anywhere from 10 crore to 20 crore rupees, whereas a robo can cost about 20 lakh rupees. So you can't keep an asset of 20 crores waiting for a 20 lakh worth of asset, obviously. Does not make sense. Which means that it is desirable that the press should not stop anywhere, should not wait for the robo. The robo has to find time, squeeze in and pick up the part and place the part safely. Okay. So that is the next generation, where the robos are suspended upside down on some linear axis, and they carry these vacuum cups with some fixtures which can grip the parts, maybe 2 parts at a time or 4 parts at a time also sometimes, and they can pick and place. So From the stack here, the robo can pick up one by one and keep it inside the die. The press does not stop anywhere. The trajectory of robo has to be designed so that it is optimized and it is able to just about squeeze through the gap and pick the component and come out without hitting anything from even the body. Not just the gripper, even the body. It should not hit the die, it should not hit the press, it should not hit the press even with the backside of the robot, right? So all this simulation has to be done in software. So robots are optimized and without stopping the press, they are able to enter and do the job of material movement. The question is, there are vibrations when you move the thing very fast. The press is working at 15 strokes a minute. So obviously all the movements have to be very fast. But when you move things very fast, when you accelerate it very fast, it will vibrate a lot. So there has to be intelligence to sense the vibration and to actively damp or cancel the vibration with active cancellation. Now these kind of intelligent features are nowadays coming in these kind of applications. Well, these were the applications which were just pick and place, where the part was getting picked and placed. There is another category, and it is a big category, where you do process control using robo. You could be doing so many things. Okay. Right from press brake automation to spot welding to hemming and dispensing, painting, welding. Welding, again, there are two varieties: as programmed welding or adaptive welding, laser hardening, laser welding, assembly, machining, deburring. I have said that machine tool is different, robo is different, but robos are also being used for machining nowadays, as long as the force applied is modest. Okay. So they can be used for deburring, polishing, grinding, deflashing and fettling. Fettling is done in foundry, in castings, because between cope and drag, the parts have a small web which projects out, that has to be cut off. Okay. In the plastic molds or HPDC dies, you have some flashes which come out between the molds, which have to be trimmed or cut or filed. And you can even do inspection, automated inspection by digitization using robotics. Okay. So there are a lot of applications where the robots are used for process automation. This is a press brake. This person is keeping the die and a punch. This is a punch, this is a die. This is almost like a shearing machine, a linear press, where the table is a linear, and you can magnetically put the die and a punch at the designated place, which is indicated by the LED. Okay. And this is the back gauging unit. You have to manually rest the part against this piece so that you are able to place it repeatably. And then the press moves up and down, and these tools create the bends, bend after bend, bend after bend, and you are able to form a complex structure from the plane sheet, something like this. Somewhere you have two double thickness bending, somewhere you have single bending, etc. Now this is not a job which can be done by stamping dies or by any other operation. This is a press brake. Now, if all the manipulation has to be done by the hand, the tool location has to be done by the hand, how slow would that process be and how unsafe would that process be is a question. What prevents a finger from going here, and somebody can lose finger also easily, right? So for such applications, the man is replaced with robo, where it can pick up the tools and it can insert the tool at the right place. It can pick up a sheet and it can tilt and turn and place and replace and locate adaptively against the back gauging unit with a robo. So it has to have a force sensor, will sense whether the sheet is butt against the backrest, okay, for the sake of repeatability. Can do some kind of adaptive alignment. Okay. Here it is just clamping and unclamping the die and punch. So robos are used in conjunction with this equipment to make it safer and to make it faster and mass producing. Another application is spot welding. These big calipers that you see are carrying the spot welding gun. There are two electrodes which are operated by pneumatics. So they close, they squeeze the two parts, two sheet parts, they press it together and then they pass the current so that the spot gets welded between them. Okay. Now this is the car body which is getting spot welded with 4 robos at a time, and this caliper should not hit anywhere. The robo should not hit the job. The robos should not hit each other. The robo should not hit the fencing through their backside. So all these things have to be simulated so that there will be no collision, there will be no accident, and the things will happen smoothly as programmed. Sometimes, suppose the sheet is not resting properly on each other, maybe the force applied by the cylinder has to be adaptive to ensure that there is a proper contact and the required current does flow. Otherwise, the welding may not happen. It will assume that the welding has been done, but the spot may not get welded properly. There is another kind of joining used in automotive. This is called hamming. You have one sheet which is bent like this, and another sheet is like this, and this is cleaved over this after bending, something like this. This is called hamming. Of course, if you do in vehicle, there is a possibility that rainwater will seep in and get filled into here and then start corroding the interior. The dust will start here. So this is supposed to be filled with some synthetic jelly to leave no space for the water. Okay. And this hamming can be done in a press. You can have a hamming die. This is a hamming die. This is a tabletop fixture where there is a hydraulic thing which operates. It folds the lips, folds it back, and then this presses from the top and does the hamming. There is another way of hamming which is done with the robo. The robo carries like a pizza cutter. It carries some rollers, and there is a fixture. The parts are located. The two parts are located on a fixture, and robo presses this roller with the designated force and tries to clinch this ham on the periphery. Right? Now this is called as roller hamming. This is an application of robo where the robo has to apply a force perpendicular to the surface, a certain designed force. Now if in one iteration it is not able to complete the position of hamming, it has to redo it adaptively until it gets fully clinched. It has to keep doing it because robo can apply limited force, but number of iterations can be more, right? So this is extension of same thing. These are the robos which are carrying these pizza cutter. It is carrying bunch of roller, and it may use different roller at different locations depending on the size and geometry available. Okay. So these are again multiple robos are doing the job without hitting each other in tandem. And here this thing is dropping the jelly in the crevices so that after folding there is no eye hole gap left, okay, for the sake of waterproofing. Now in this case the vacuum cup is moving the part and this nozzle is remaining fixed and the part is moved. So there are two approaches are either you move the nozzle or you move the part. In this case the part is being moved. In this case this is the jelly which has been dropped, you can see. In this case, the nozzle is moving. So both the strategies are possible. These are called as sealant dispensing application for robots. Okay. Prior to hamming, you have to do this, and this is the roller hamming. So when you are dispensing, it must maintain a uniformity of paste to be dropped, and if the flow of paste changes, then the robo must slow down. Because it is important that you drop the right amount of paste. So if there is a problem in flow of the paste, because it is coming through some convoluted tubes, so probably the flow may be uneven, but robo has to adapt. Robo has to adjust its speed to ensure that there is a uniform deposition. And hamming robo, on the other hand, must apply only the designated force to press the ham. It may require number of adaptive iterations to achieve the final ham position. if the Hamming force of Hamming is much more important than the dimension. The force is important than the dimension. Basically, that's what I'm saying. This is the painting application. These are the robo wearing jackets. And why they wear jackets? So that the paint mist will not enter the rotating joints. The joints will get seized otherwise. So there is a synthetic jacket which is worn by the robo. Here the robos, multiple robos are doing painting on the underside of the vehicle. Here they are opening the bonnet and trunk lid and the doors. The robo opens the door and trunk lid and bonnet and paints, spray paints inside as well as the outside. Okay. So again, these are teach-in. This is a hazardous environment, so no human presence is desirable. So all robots do the job. So many robots you can see, and they don't hit the job and they don't hit each other. And these fingers which you see are electrostatic electrodes to deflect the paint towards the surface to minimize the wastage of the paint, right? So here the robots wear jacket to prevent paint from getting into the rotating clearance. Camera, if it is there, it has to be there, of course, but it has to be exposed for very short time because the paint mist will go and settle on the lens. So, and again, the requirement is that layer of paint has to be uniform, irrespective of the profile, accessibility, etc. Whether you have a flat surface or you have crevice, the layer of paint should be uniform. So robo has to adjust the speed adaptively as per the paint flow and paint deposition. And robo must open the bonnet and also do other things for gaining access inside. This is welding. 4 robots are doing welding on a trunnion type of fixture. You know trunnion. Trunnion in Hindi is something like palna, which is rocking on the axis. Okay, so it is rocking the job for giving accessibility to the robo for doing welding. Now 4 robots are simultaneously welding. They are sharing the workload, and there is a longish piece here, maybe long member of the vehicle, and they are welding together without hitting each other and without hitting the job or the fixture. And this is adaptive welding. Here, now what happens? One robo does welding. There is another inspector robo which checks the welding with a laser, and wherever the welding is inadequate or something is missed out, it does selectively rework adaptively. So this is kind of adaptive welding, one kind of adaptive welding, where the robo inspects the job it has done and corrects if required. Okay. So this is adaptive welding. There is another kind of adaptive welding where, hey, one question that I can ask you is why you never see robo doing electrode welding. In electrode welding, there is additional complication that length of electrode will keep changing. So how will you control the position? Another thing is, how does the robo know whether it is welding or it is not welding? It is just moving in the trajectory. It does not know if welding has happened or not, right? So if you are having current sensing and weld material deposition sensing, and based on that, you are controlling the feeding of robo, that is called as adaptive welding. And suppose you are welding a pipe on a flat end, and you have a turntable where the thing is turning. Suppose the welding electrode is over and somebody has gone to pick up the electrode, the table has to stop there. And if the rate of welding is more, it should move faster. If it is lesser, it should adjust the speed. That is called adaptive welding. Now another example is laser hardening. In laser hardening, you have a robo riding on a linear axis, and die and mold surfaces can be hardened, which of course must be hardened. And earlier days they used to do by running a flame. Nowadays they do it by running a laser spot. The shape of laser spot and size of laser spot can be dynamically controlled, right from a square of 4 by 4 to 38 by 38. You can have a rectangle, you can have a square, and you can program the trajectory, and you can program the size of laser spot and the energy density, and it can go on throwing the laser, and You can do teach-in or you can do offline programming using CAD/CAM. The requirement here is uniform hardness should come everywhere. So laser cannot stop anywhere. So you require 6-axis robo. Speed and laser power has to be adaptively modulated based on thermal imaging. The problem is the hardening is happening from self-quenching. Somewhere the conductivity is higher, somewhere it is lower, depending on where you have ribs underneath, where you don't have. Somewhere you have less cross section, somewhere you have bigger cross section on the job. So you can't throw the same power everywhere. So either you have to have a radiation pyrometer or you have to have thermal imaging, and based on the actual temperature, you have to modulate the laser spot power density so that you get uniform hardness and uniform quenching everywhere. And even the rectangular spot size is dynamically modulated as programmed. Now this is an assembly application where the robots, earlier applications where you have seen the robots move very fast and it has to have fencing from the safety considerations. Now here there is a requirement that robo does the tending and the man is doing the assembly. So robo and man has to work together. So robo has to work slowly. If the person is next to him, the robo has to slow down. So robo comes with sensors, and these blue caps that you see are collapsible and there is a limit switch inside. So when somebody touches these joints only will touch actually. The middle of the limb will not touch. The chances are less. So whenever the knuckle touches, it stops there. It senses that there is a collision happening. Okay. Now these are the special kind of robots called as cobots or collaborative robots, which can work together with men. So cobots are used where work is shared with human beings. So tending may be done with cobo and assembly may be done by men, or sometimes vice versa. Suppose the robo is supposed to do assembly at inaccessible location, men may give him the part and robo may do the assembly. And the parts may be identified through barcode, QR code, or through RFID. And there has to be a force sensor. Suppose robo is doing the assembly and it has to push a fastener through the hole. The holes may or may not have alignment. When you are putting the fastener by hand, you are able to align the bolt. You are able to jiggle it a little here and there so that it will go. The robo has to have a force sensor and it has to jiggle so that the bolt goes in. Okay. That kind of flexibility it has to have. That kind of increased dexterity based on the feedback it has to have. So it has to be a robo with a sense, additional sense. So it has to either have a camera or a force sensor or both. Now, talking of application where robots are used for machining, you can use them for robotic milling, sculpting, engraving, trimming, cutting. In plastic parts, sometimes you have the gates clinging around. So you have to have a de-gating. With a chisel, you break those gates and risers. So that can be done by a robo. You can have grinding with robo, and you can have sanding, you can have deflashing, forging, and even the finishing and polishing, and robotic deburring, removing the burrs from the sharp corners. So basically here in these applications, limited force is being applied through the ride-on axis, and position may be compromised. If in one iteration it is not able to do deburring, suppose the burr is too thick, it will come again and do it again. But it will apply the same force every time. It may do it 10 times until the burr goes. So the cycle time is flexible, the force is limited. Now here again you can follow both the principles. You can move the job with the robo or you can move the tool with the robo. Last but not the least, inspection with robo. These are digitizers which can pick up all the coordinates from the surface of a car. So suppose the cars are passing on the assembly line, robo is carrying this scanner. It is able to record the coordinates, entire coordinates, million points from the surface of the bonnet. And it knows car after car what are the defects which are going. And all these deformations in different colors indicates different values, right? And not only you can inspect it from top, you can inspect it from bottom. You can take a cross section. You can have the total envelope. You can find out what is happening. Literally, you can take X-ray of the thing and you can determine any dimension. Gone are the days when people ask you to check 2 dimensions with a vernier. Nowadays, the philosophy is that you digitize all the points on the surface, and then in software you determine whatever values you want to know. So that is done by the software, but the inspector captures all the points always. So that is this. So here you use robo to be able to go inside the car, to be able to traverse from outside and record all the points from inside as well as outside, so that you can find out things like thickness also. Right? So in summary, industrial application of robots no doubt require the knowledge of programming, teaching, interfacing robo with the PLC. But more than that, it requires thorough knowledge of application and their specific requirement and the software support ecosystem which goes with it. Hey, in the end, suppose you have to teach Johnny algebra. Of course, you have to know algebra, but more than that, you have to know Johnny. So that is the conclusion. So today's talk was more focused on the application and their specific requirement rather than how you teach in robo, how you program, what are the software. For that, of course, there are umpteen courses which are going. Good. Thank you. That's all from me.